Hello, my name is Joy Robinson. These lectures are about technical communication, and this series of lectures covers the rhetorical situation. Today's lecture is an overview of the rhetorical situation. What is a rhetorical situation? Let's begin with the definition of rhetoric. Now, I know we have other kinds of connotations for the word rhetoric, mostly being full of hot air, but the actual definition is using language effectively to accomplish a means. Well, if we expand on that, we can get to the rhetorical situation, which includes the circumstances in which we communicate. And if we use language effectively to communicate in those circumstances, then we arrive at why we're having this discussion. The rhetorical situation encompasses all the types of ways that we communicate. And if we want to do that effectively, we need to examine that situation. Now, this is not a new idea. This concept of rhetoric has been around for quite some time. In fact, Aristotle is known for having written down the principles of rhetoric, and we'll talk about a few of those in just a moment. He essentially put together a triangle or a balance of three types of appeals that could be used to advance an effective argument. He started with ethos, which really referred to the writer's ethics, which addressed trustworthiness, credibility. Was that person knowledgeable? He also included pathos, which referred to the audience, and it addressed how you related to the audience. How did you get them to buy into your argument? Did you sway them emotionally? Did you use some other type of method to get them to think that the argument was valid? And then last but not least, logos, to discuss the message or the purpose of the message and how that might correspond to whatever appeals were necessary to get the audience to buy in. So the rhetorical situation then, from the lectures you've listened to previously, can be related in this manner, where there is a sender or an author and a target or the audience, and you're sending a message, basically a package that consists of a message and a medium. And then there's a negotiation between the two parts of that conversation. There's also a situation. There's a situation that the target exists in that you have to comply with. And that situation dictates a lot of things, and we'll explore those in later lectures. One of the things that hasn't quite been talked about yet is the community or the culture that this entire conversation takes place in. None of these things happen in a vacuum, and you have to first consider where you are and what's going on in order to deliver effective messages. So in our new image here, you can see that I've substituted the author for the sender and the audience for the target. And these terms are a bit more broad and much more appropriate for our conversations. Now, we talked earlier about the author, and we mentioned that the author has a goal. I like to liken that concept to viewing the world through a series of colored glasses. Let's say your colored glasses are purple or rose. When you look at the world and when you communicate, you talk through that set of colored glasses. Now, the audience is wearing a different set of colored glasses with a different color. So the challenge then is to get that package back and forth through these various differently colored glasses so that both ends of that line can understand each other. That brings us around to the concept of credibility. As an author, not only do you have to express yourself through your own rose-colored glasses, but you also have to address credibility in what you write and what you say. Because if the audience doesn't believe you, that's going to be a problem. Now, we mentioned before that the package is made up of the message, the medium, but we didn't talk about it having a mode. You've already read in some of the literature from the class that there is a mode involved as well. The mode being the various forms that the message can take across the various mediums, which come together as woven: written, oral, verbal, electronic, and nonverbal. And you already know there's no separating those particular concepts. They're all interwoven together. You can't have a purely written form any longer. You can't have a purely oral form any longer. These things are all intertwined. One of the other things we haven't talked about much also is genre. So not only are we working with a conduit or a canvas known as the medium, but nowadays we talk about it in terms of genre. So we have email, we have forms, we have letters, we have infographics that help to carry our message. Last but not least are the two terms for audience, including situation and context. So the context is the use the audience has for your message, and the situation is based on the background for the audience. So in order to craft your package, you must first think about you and your goals and those rose-colored glasses that you're wearing. From there, you have to consider your target, because what we need to do is make sure that your target is receiving the information and understanding the information that you've sent. So the context: where will this information be used? How is your audience going to use it? You have to address the situation. What is the worldview and the background of the target? You have to also consider the level of detail. Based on the context and the situation, how much detail do I need to provide to this audience so that they can understand? And then based on these answers, you can further draft and select for your package your purpose, whatever persuasive strategy you've decided on, the topic and the message, and then of course the medium or the genre. So how do you use this? Well, of course, that's the ultimate question. Looking back at our graphic, we can see that you have to be aware of the rhetorical situation every single time you communicate, whether you're at the water cooler, whether you're doing a job interview, or whether you're just sending an email at work. And you have to be able to adapt your package, which contains your message, to fit the target and the target situation. Because if you want to be understood, and you want your messages, whether they come out in the form of email or reports or white papers, if you want them to be understood, this is what you need to do in order to make that happen. Let's give you a few examples before we close out this lesson. All right, example 1. Let's say you're working on a piece of expensive equipment and you've just received your results. And you want to construct a report to Jim, who is your boss, in hopes that he will consider an upgrade. Now, Jim is an expert in this area, and he's also your manager, but he's not a decision maker. And we'll explore more of those things a bit later in our lectures. But if we have some information that we need to provide to him in a report, let's say we're going to do a feasibility report. And we have 3 courses of action we want to talk about. Replace the alignment of the heads, replace the entire machine, or do nothing. Now, we know Jim is an expert and an advisor, but we also know that he's probably going to forward this information on to his boss, Pauline, who really has the decision-making authority. In other words, she has the ability to sign off on your ideas. Therefore, you now need to construct this report for 2 audiences. Maybe your document would look like this. And if you look closely, you can see P's where we're adding sections for Paula, and J where we're adding sections for Jim. Sometimes they'll be targeted at both, but they're going to be some specific areas that are only going to be for these types of audiences. For example, Jim is an expert. He probably doesn't need a table of contents. But Paula is not an expert. She might need a table of contents in order to navigate the document. Paula is also going to make the decision to follow your advice or not. You might want to provide an executive summary to prevent her from reading the entire 25-page report. And this may have all of the information that she would need. So as we have seen, the rhetorical situation is made up of a number of parts, and we'll continue to explore them in future lectures. Thanks for listening.